Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chromosome 6 podcast, IKR. We're a bunch of scientists gathered here today to talk about the science of random things. I have with me some of the team members of Chromosome 6, Esther, Shiloh, and Sameeha. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Awesome. Are you guys ready to talk science?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this. So Sameeha, we were chatting the other day about baking. You were telling me some interesting things about the Maillard's reaction. What is it?
Yeah, so just like take a trip down memory lane on where all this started. So when I was studying nutrition, our professor, she would always try to relate things in the daily to science. And it was always like a surprise because we don't tend to think we don't tend to think beyond another basis for something. And one thing that stuck around with me is when she started explaining something called the Maillard reaction. So, when you bake bread, there's this unexplainable browning that occurs on the top, like on the top surface. So that's the Maillard reaction. It's basically, so the browning is a reaction between the proteins and the reducing sugars in the bread. And so a lot of people don't know this, but the protein is basically gluten. So gluten is consisting of two proteins. There's one called gliadin and one glutenin. And I think each of them is responsible for the elasticity, like the extendability in dough. And so the proteins react with the reducing sugars in bread, and this gives like the brown color. And what people do to enhance this reaction is sometimes they coat the bread or like the baked goods with like an egg wash. So this just enhances the color. And actually, the Maillard reaction, it's more than just color. So it also helps determine the taste. So for example, if you so it depends on like the temperature at which you cook your food, or even how long you cook your food for. So this can either lead to flavors that are pleasant or flavors that are too bitter. So you can always control these type of reactions to cater to how you'll receive your food. And that's something that is very important in like not only food quality, but also food safety. So this was just like one of the fun facts that I found the most intriguing. I'll just share something else for the heck of it. So, when deep greens like spinach and kale, they're very deep, right? Before we cook them in their raw form. But once we cook them, they turn like very dull. And it's only because of the chlorophyll ring. So the chlorophyll, which gives them their deep green color, the chlorophyll that contains magnesium, when you cook the greens, you're basically applying heat. So the heat displaces the magnesium and it's no longer chlorophyll. So the whole pigment, it gets overshadowed by a new different pigment that is more dull in color. So that's like something like, why do greens dull when they cook?
Yeah,
because
I've always wondered that, but I did not know. It was the magnesium. That's so
like
cool.
lovely chemistry in how
a lot of food
like,
science is just chemistry.
Are there ways in which you could prevent that from happening? Maybe is there like a time point or a
I
heat?
think, so what people do to prevent certain reactions to greens would be blanching. I think that's what they do, is like to stop any
Real quick.
enzymatic reactions. Yeah.
I think that's when like you kind of cook the food, but also get the colors very well. Because when you blanch, I've noticed that blanched food have like really bright and lovely colors.
True. We cook our food a lot, which probably is not a good thing. Do you put the egg wash like right before putting it in the oven, or does it happen in the middle? Like, do you take the food half baked? What's the go-to?
So what we usually do is apply it before popping your baked stuff in the oven. Give them like a nice coat of an egg wash, and then let science do its thing.
Is that what, do they use eggs in the bakery too, or like when it's mass production?
I don't really know, but at home, I know that most of us, to make our products look very enticing, would apply an egg wash. But I think
Yeah.
most bakeries, they just rely on, just Maillard reaction by its
And I
natural.
also
Interesting.
think it might have to do with like what we're baking. Because if you know the
Yeah,
type of bread we have in Sri Lanka, it's just the top that is like so dark and bitter.
Yeah.
At the
true.
bottom, it's like it's not overcooked, it's perfectly done bread. I think it depends on the type of yeast you
Interesting.
use or the type of bread you're making.
So there's so much chemistry that goes into baking, is what you guys are telling me. So you said you did food science. Was that your major, Sameeha?
No, I didn't do food science. I studied nutrition, but yes, food
Okay.
science was like part of a component
Mm,
in the degree. It was something I really enjoyed because,
okay.
like I said, it's basically science in the daily. Like you could really pay attention because you wanted to know more.
Lovely. Do you end up teaching your mom these things?
I stopped learning food science halfway, and with that, I stopped reading stuff as well. But like
Yeah.
since I'm like diving into the food industry,
Mm-hmm.
I start like relaying, new things even more.
Yeah.
Do you kind of
That's
think
lovely.
about it and apply it in your daily cooking or, occasional
Yeah.
bakings?
Awesome. So we were talking about something else food related the other day, right, Shiloh?
Yeah, Shiloh.
Yeah, talking about food, I was telling how hard it is to like store vanilla and keep vanilla beans because,
Yeah.
you know, the vanilla flavoring that we get, it is actually vanillin and it's
Okay.
synthesized chemically to give the flavor of the actual vanilla beans. So um, vanilla beans here in the UK is like very expensive. So I wanted to get some from Sri Lanka and I was asking my mom to send some. And when I spoke to the guy who sells them, he was like, we very rarely stock it because it's so hard to maintain it. He was like, you can't keep it in the fridge because it goes dry and you can't keep it outside. There's like a perfect combination of humidity and temperature that you need to store it. And I was like, okay, so is it even worth getting vanilla all the way from there?
Talking about the pod, the bean.
Pod, the
Okay.
vanilla bean, because it has its own lovely flavor when you use the non-chemically synthesized one. And
Mm-hmm.
also I don't know, they probably add other stuff to dilute it or make it different. So the vanilla flavor is not actually the flavor from the vanilla bean is very mild and nice. And then we were talking the other day, and Esther was telling me that there are these bacteria that can synthesize vanillin. And I was like, wow, that just gave me it felt like, how insulin is produced by yeast, and
Mm-hmm.
you can get it at very good quality. So I was thinking maybe if you produce vanillin from microbes, there might be of very good quality, which is similar to the taste you get or flavor you get from the vanilla beans. And I just
Yeah.
did some reading on it. And so the best part is it's not just this bacteria making vanillin, they're upcycling plastic. The PET bottles and stuff,
Mm.
mostly the single-use plastics that we use, they have this when you break them down, uh, they form terephthalic acid, which is the building block of PET. And some of the scientists from the University of Edinburgh had found out that you can genetically modify E. coli to produce an enzyme that can digest terephthalic acid and produce vanillin, which is
That
the
is so cool.
vanilla. I know, I found that very cool. And so yeah, it's still in the starting bit. I think they're just trying to see how feasibility is to commercialize it. And if they do, we probably would get it is like we'll probably solve two problems at once.
Mm-hmm.
The global demand for vanillin, which is pretty high right now. So that and also the plastic pollution problem, because if we
Yeah.
can, there'll be very less landfills with this, and the production is not going to cost in terms of what do you call it? The primary products,
Raw
The
material?
the raw
metabolites.
materials. Yeah,
Okay.
my
Yeah.
brain just blanked there. So because the raw materials are like PET bottles and single-use plastics.
Yeah.
So you're going to reduce landfills, use that. The expensive part would be the culture.
Yeah.
But again, it's just a huge it's like biotech. It's raw biotech. That's what we learned for cell
Sure.
technology. And they're
So
going to
this was a
produce
study in
vanillin.
2021.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is 2,000 rupees for a few vanilla
I
beans
know. I
expensive?
got like 4 beans for like 2 or 3,000 rupees again. Yeah, Sri Lanka.
Because I saw one near my workplace. They sell like imported goods, and like when I saw it, I immediately remembered you. But then I was like,
Right.
this could
Yeah.
be too expensive.
Yeah. And even the production of vanilla. So I was like curious on how they produce vanilla, the bean that we get. I was thinking all this time that it was just like dried vanilla pods, but it's actually cured. So the vanilla that they harvest is green, and it undergoes a curing process where they like uh, put it, I don't know if they blanch it or boil it, but they introduce it to some heat, and then they hang it in. It's produced in tropical countries. So I think the humidity and temperature in certain regions facilitate the growth of certain thermophilic bacteria. And again, when I was reading it, my brain, I thought it should be fungi because most of the curing processes, there's always fungi or yeast involved.
Just
But
like
on the
cheese.
contrary, yeah, there were no fungi or yeast in the cultures that they generated when they were studying this curing process of vanilla. And it's just thermophilic bacteria.
So
And
cool.
they are the ones that give this really, really warm and nice flavor to vanilla, the brown ones that we use.
So are these strains specific to sort of the tropical countries? Does it change?
Not really sure.
I don't think
haven't.
enough research has been done in that area, but
Yeah.
that'll be
I
cool
mean,
to
you
know.
have to study the whole process because where do you find vanilla plants? I know Sri Lanka was producing vanilla. I don't know if they still do, but I know you can
Very few
grow
countries
vanilla.
do, yeah.
Yeah, but like probably 90% of our vanilla is exported because there's a huge demand for vanilla.
Market for it, yeah.
Yeah, I know Madagascar and vanilla is very famous, so maybe
That's
Madagascar
true.
is one of the countries.
I
So
know the
yeah.
perfect tagline for the vanilla beans made out of recycled plastic. Go green with vanilla bean.
Oh, yeah,
that
that
is
sounds really
so
good.
cool.
Esther, our wordsmith strikes again.
Yeah.
Is that
And
what
did
you
you
were
know?
churning around in your brain
Yeah,
all this
like-
time?
No, I was trying to say it before.
We should actually follow up on the research to see who's
I know.
commercializing it and
And the bacteria is E. coli, so
mhm.
it's not like a
Oh, really?
complicated bacteria. Well, the last bit I read from their research was that it gives a pretty good yield of over 50%. Actually, it converted about 79% of the TA. So it's pretty
What's
good.
TA?
It's, sorry, terephthalic acid.
Okay, so
The basic
they
base.
convert 50% of it to vanillin.
79.
Oh.
79% of it is converted, but I'm not sure if it's converted to vanillin
Okay.
or it's like digested, but it might have other products, right? So I don't know what percent is vanillin. But there's a lot of work that has to be done in commercializing it.
True.
I'm pretty sure it's much easier than things passing on to through clinical trials, so it shouldn't take long. Did you know that the vanilla plant was an orchid?
Not really.
Yeah. It's actually
and
an orchid plant, the vanilla,
wow.
the scientific vanillin plant.
I've seen the pictures of vanilla orchids, and there is one very similar to it. I don't know if you all have heard about it. The ghost orchid. Ever heard of it?
No,
What?
I've only heard the
And they
butterfly.
recently found it after like 15 years in the UK too.
Oh,
Yeah. So these are spooky looking, rare, super rare orchids that
interesting.
are mostly found in Florida and the Caribbean. And so what makes these orchids special is that they don't have green leaves like normal orchids do, but they do have a green root for green roots for photosynthesis. But
Okay.
more than photosynthesis, they rely on microorganisms through this process that we know as symbiosis. So basically, when two different organisms team up and live together, sometimes they both win, and sometimes one benefits and the other doesn't, and sometimes you just get the short end of the stick. So in the case
Yeah.
of ghost orchids, then they can't get their nutrients on their own because it's just the roots that are green, that contain chlorophyll. So they depend on the special fungi in their roots to absorb water and nutrients from the environment. And the fungi don't immediately benefit from this. Only once the orchids are able to produce sugars, that the fungi are able to feed on the sugars and photosynthesize. So pretty one-sided deal at first, but then it works.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
trust the
for
fungi
sure.
has on the orchid that I
Yeah.
give you for a while and then I know you're going to give it back to me.
Such
Right?
parents, right?
Yeah. They keep
Yeah,
nurturing us until,
yeah,
Don't let
without
them
Yeah.
do
expecting.
that.
I know, right? Yeah.
So the sad part
Um,
is that these orchids is actually soon to be extinct.
really?
Because there's lots of reasons for it, but one of the major reasons is that they have a very long maturity period. So it takes like 15 years for them to bloom, and it actually depends on the correct temperature and humidity and
Oh,
light conditions for them to actually start maturing and entering the reproduction stage. And also,
Wow.
like, even the seeds are so tiny, they don't have food storage like most plants. So they're entirely reliant on the fungi for any nutrients, even for their seed. So this is like a very slow and delicate process, just like you partnering up with a toxic ex in the beginning. um, and the other part is that, pollinators, like, not because this, if you see the picture of orchids, the ghost orchid, it's like flung downwards. So then they need like this particular pollinators with like a long proboscis. So there is only one type of pollinator for this. It's a type of a moth. I can't remember its name.
Such a
Yeah, it's the,
complicated life that plant has.
I know, and a lonely life because,
I know.
yeah.
No wonder it's going extinct. It relies on too many things.
Right. Rare things. I
Um,
mean, during the whole time you were talking about, I'll let you get back to it, but the only thing that's sort of running in my mind is how amazingly rare it is and how rare things depend on the right conditions and the environment for it to actually bloom. Like
Yeah.
we're all humans, we're all unique in different ways. And sort of in C6, we talk quite a lot about being uniquely human. But for that uniqueness to come across, we need other people. We need others to actually nurture us the right way. And all we have to do is just look at the environment to see lessons happening in front of us.
The whole time Esther was talking, I was thinking about, okay, how can you, maybe you can control this to maybe grow it in a greenhouse. But every time I come up with something, she's like, but also this.
You
And
need
then I'm like,
this.
okay, yeah.
there was a research actually conducted at the University of Florida where they were successful in germinating the ghost orchid seeds in the lab so that they can have like more growing, not just one every 15 years. But then it didn't stick around for long because it was like this high maintenance pet.
I
If
know,
one
right?
of these parameters were off, something goes. Either the fungi, the strain of fungi was deviated, where they underwent mutations, or it was the orchid itself that some part of its life stage it was not right. Something went wrong. The
Mm.
only place that they're able to grow is in their natural habitat.
Yeah.
And the name of the moth is the giant sphinx moth. How could I forget it? Sphinx is a
The
cat.
Sphinx. Yeah, you like cats.
So that's the life of the ghost orchid. And now, because of its very exclusive and high maintenance lifestyle, scientists actually use it as a climate indicator.
Oh,
So
okay.
like a climate sensor. So if the environmental conditions change, or if there is a growth of the orchid before its prime season, that's before like late part of autumn and early part of winter, then it's sort of like a red flag that climate change is affecting the ecosystem. And
I
that's
think the
just not for
sorry.
these ghost orchids, like all orchids in general are bioindicators.
So you think the climate change could be the reason why it's going into extinction?
I think that plays a role, yeah. I'm sure that they were not, they did not take 15 years to bloom back then. I'm sure it
Okay.
Yeah.
was way shorter. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if the orchids are so like fastidious, they're very stubborn, how can we rely on them to, give us an idea about climate change? Like how reliable are they as bioindicators?
No, I thought about it. So in the Great Britain, they actually thought that this was an extinct plant. It was only found in US and the Caribbean areas, right? Like close to Mexico. So when it bloomed like 2 years ago, they were pretty shocked. Uh, Either because of the climate change that the uh, the UK region went through, that it was able, one of the dormant seeds that were able to start growing, or it could be that it took longer than 25 years to bloom. It could be the climate conditions that caused the growth of the plant itself and brought it out of extinction.
And they're sure it's not an invasive species. No one who traveled from the US could have introduced it
Mm,
accidentally.
I don't think so.
I don't
Because
think so. Yeah. Add like a random seed, some scientist studying that and then jumping to the UK to study something else. And the coincidences are like very, very small. So I don't
Conspiracy
think,
theories
yeah.
much. Yeah, it's amazing how rare they are and how they're indicators of possibly climate change. I mean, it reminds me of a conversation I've had with a friend who does not believe in climate change or thinks that we're only here for a short time, so we can do whatever we want on the earth. Sort of like maybe climate change doesn't matter. Maybe the world is changing. Maybe it'll change anyway, because ecosystems do evolve, and any species that cannot adjust itself to the environment would go extinct. But the ecosystem continues, right? That's what happened with dinosaurs. They just couldn't cope up with the environment. Something else came in its place. So maybe humans would go extinct and something else would take its place. So we're at the losing end, whether we believe it or not. But to me, what humanly strikes is that ecosystems in nature, it's so complex. There is absolutely no way that we can replicate every component of it. And it's just sad that we don't acknowledge it. The fact that we think we could sort of treat it as something that's not important, something that's not cherished. And I wish people would not do that. Pay its due respect. Sorry, got a bit philosophical there.
no, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was, so I'm an educator for those who don't know. So I was having this conversation with an 8 or 9 year old
Mhm.
who knew that I was a science teacher for the big kids, and he came up to me and he spoke, oh, I know fun facts about the black hole and the sun and all that. And he was talking about the sun's funeral, and yeah, which will be 15 billion years later. And I said,
Okay.
we can't attend it, right? Because we'll be long dead before that. It's like, no, uh, we can go to another planet and have the funeral for the sun. Like that's the it's all instilled in them at such a young age. Like this is not our only planet. We have an
Mm.
option B.
Yeah, crazy. No,
Yeah.
we never had that as kids, as like
Yeah.
Earth was the only place life was possible. And
And
it
also that's a very good attitude to have. Like, you're trying your best to do and to kind of think that anything can be done.
yeah,
There are multiple ways. You just have to think like a
think
9-year-old.
outside the box for sure.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So you were talking about vanilla and bacteria, how they're sort of
Yeah,
dependent, and Esther, you were talking about fungi and the orchid. So it just also brings back how dependent we are on the microbial system.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we walk around thinking that we own the planet, but really, could we actually
yeah.
function without things that we can't see?
No, there are like, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard that there are more bacteria on us than our blood, than our body
Mhm.
cells. So
Cells.
yeah. So if you take the whole microbial population, they're pretty much high compared to our population. It's
Any
just
of
going to
you
be very
interested
high.
in microbiology, or is that any of your favorite subjects?
I was a microbiology analyst, so I naturally kind of have an interest
A
towards microbes.
tendency,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Food
Mm,
science depends quite a lot on microbiology,
What
yeah.
doesn't depend
Yeah,
on
for sure.
right?
microbiology?
And if you
I
I
take like
think,
the food, like I'm just relating things that we're talking about right now. If you take the food that, are traditional food from any community, or maybe the ones that I can think of, and like through all civilizations, the old civilizations, all of them use some sort of a fermentation process
yeah,
to make their
Yeah,
food
true. And
across
like,
cultures.
across all cultures.
yeah. But like, so I was reading a paper by like researchers, and like us as Sri Lankans, we actually don't have a lot of fermented food in our diet. Like, given their health benefits,
Yeah.
like the pickles, what we call acharu.
Mhm.
I
Mm-mm.
thought they were fermented, but then I was speaking with my supervisor, and he was like, it's actually not because we're not giving like a right environment for them. So when we're making the acharu, we're actually adding vinegar. So
Yeah.
that kind of, inhibits their growth.
Inhibit.
But then if you think about kimchi, we're not adding any acid, but like we're just nurturing the growth of the bacteria that is inherent. So that is
Mm.
both a prebiotic and a probiotic. I would say the
Oh,
Sri Lankan diet is really lacking in fermented
interesting.
Sauerkraut
foods.
is also fermented cabbage, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
So
yeah,
you see again how different cultures, kimchi in the East Asian region and sauerkraut in like the Europe,
Europe.
Germany or whatever.
yeah.
And the still fermented cabbage.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Mm.
these are like their traditional dishes. And
Yeah.
That's
And it's like
interesting.
almost staples for them. So it's something that they have in the
Mm.
daily. So like their
yeah,
benefits are reaped like for the entirety
Yeah.
of our life. If we in our 20s start eating kimchi just because we
yeah,
now know their benefits,
Hmm.
it
yeah,
won't
it
like,
now,
the
Catch
effects
up.
won't come into
Yeah.
fruition
yeah, I
like
think
this.
it also has a lot to do with your gut bacteria, how they
Yeah,
are developed
true.
from a young age.
Yeah,
And if you're
True.
introduced to eating these kind of fermented foods, your body kind of develops its gut bacteria in
yeah,
some way. And you know how diets change the gut bacteria. So I know it's all fun to
Yeah,
hop into different diets, but there should be a lot of research done
true.
on what is best for
true.
you sometimes, which is why I hear a lot of people, and personally even me, on certain diets I feel um very energetic and very
Hmm.
alive actually. And again, since I it just happened that in one of my modules we were talking about gut bacteria, and I did some Google, just simple Google research just before the lecture. And I saw that depending on the different diets, there are certain populations of gut bacteria that are increased in proportion compared to the others. So let's
Yeah.
say you cut off all glucose. There are bacteria that thrive on glucose. And for some people, the products that those bacteria produce can induce inflammation.
Hmm.
And there's a gut-brain axis. I
True.
recently was talking about it to you guys as well. There's
Yeah.
like a gut-brain axis, and scientists believe that the um, gut has its own kind of nervous system
Yeah.
like similar to the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord and everything, because there's a lot of things that the gut can influence. And for some people, bacterial population that thrive on glucose can trigger an immune response, which is why when they cut off glucose and everything, that population significantly reduces. So you will have like less bloating, you will have less allergies and everything, because it's like when that population is higher, your body is on a constant allergic response
Yeah.
without you even knowing it, because you might not be doing anything. It's not
True.
it's not an allergy coming from the external environment. So,
Yeah.
and it's very personalized. Something that works for me will not work for you.
Yeah.
And we
For sure.
wouldn't even know, even doctors might not know, because when the gut bacteria and everything is like, involved, it's very, it complicates everything. So,
Sure.
yeah,
I think mindfulness in whatever we do is a big thing. It's
it is.
truly
Yeah.
listening to what our body is actually telling us, because
Yeah.
it's an amazing set of chemical reactions that take place inside every cell. So just like the chemistry that happens inside food and the chemistry that happens between a microbe and a plant, the chemistry that happens between a microbe and sort of a processed plant. I think that's the very basis of life, chemistry.
Yeah.
I should have paid.
You know how
Go on.
professors always, like professors who teach physics, biology, or chemistry, at the start of their class, they're like, physics is the basis of everything. And, even the chemistry teachers say the same thing, the biology teachers say the same thing. But like, it's actually, everything coined
True.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. No offense, teachers. Okay.
I know. I mean, I liked my biology more than I did my chemistry, but it looks like everything that happens in biology is chemistry
Yeah.
and is physics at some point.
At some point, yeah.
Yeah, which is really cool.
So,
For sure. Warm-blooded.
yeah.
Awesome. This was a nice chat, girls. Thank you, Esther, Sameeha, and Shiloh for joining me today. And hopefully we can talk about some more random science facts in the coming weeks. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and stay curious. Come back for another episode with Chromosome 6. Bye now.